Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mindful Conversations. I am Dr. Lori Monaco with Align Yourself, Inc. I am known as the Badass Buddha and the Weight Loss Doc. I am a chiropractic physician, transformational and mindfulness coach and speaker. And I am very, very excited about our guest this evening. This is a huge thrill for me because when I decided to go to chiropractic school and become a doc, it was after reading this man's book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles, when I was in college. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. And that changed my perspective on how to be as a doctor. And that really set the bar very high. And this is just absolutely thrilling for me to introduce my guest, Dr. Bernie Siegel. So good evening, sir. How are you?
Thank you. And I want to say that I reached down for a minute. I have to get the chiropractic for a minute. It was something I had, but I didn't have any great belief in it. But nearby is a chiropractor. And I have had a lot of injuries, from falling off the roof to people crashing into my car, going through red lights. And every time he'd walk past me, he'd say, you ought to come to my office. And one day we came out of a restaurant, and who's standing there? The chiropractor. It's like, how does he end up? And he said, you ought to. I said, I'm coming. It's obvious God wants me to see you, or you wouldn't always be standing there everywhere I go. And he has helped me enormously. And I think it's called Groutier. It's a special kind of chiropractic, and they're like putting everything back where it belongs.
Yes.
And he's made a big difference and helped me enormously.
Wonderful.
But it was almost like a spiritual event that wherever I went, here he is.
Maybe he was stalking you. He was just.
Well, I doubt that, but I think it's as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross used to say to me, Bernie, there are no coincidences.
That's correct.
You begin to think your consciousness, in a sense, sends you to all these places.
And I agree with you. I agree with you. One
other thing I wanted to mention, because you talked about a journey. And one day I went into a patient who was at hospice to visit. And after the visit, I got up to say goodbye. And he said, goodbye, journey. Now, he'd known me for years. He knows my name is Bernie. But again, no coincidence. I thought, wow, he's telling me a lot, about life. We're all on a journey. And yes. I thought, well, if I was being born again, I would tell my parents, call me Journey, not Bernie. But all of us realize we're on a journey, and you can get help, you can get direction. It's all the things that make a difference in your life. Yeah. I'm not denying them. When somebody says, oh, chiropractor, what can they do? Oh, what does that diet do? What does this do? You keep an open mind and have faith and belief. It's amazing what can happen in your body.
Absolutely. And speaking of journeys, so I want to do the intro on you, but
go ahead.
so the funny part is that my journey, I read your book when I was in college, so it was probably around 1989, 90. I was trying to figure it out, and then right as I was getting ready to leave school and go to chiropractic school down south, my best friend at the time and roommate, she had to stay on, and she was taking a course in the summer, and you were speaking in the course. And I said to myself, oh my God, I can't believe this. I so want to be there, but I've got to leave because I've got to take some prerequisite courses. And I can't believe you're going to get to meet, Bernie Siegel. This is so great. And then flash forward to last year, 2019, and I'm at a mutual friend of ours, her open house, Elaine Mercusio. And at her open house for her business. And then she and I were talking like months before, and she brings up your name just very nonchalantly. And I'm like, and it sat for a second, and I went, wait a minute, did you say Bernie Siegel? And she said, yeah. And I said, you know him? And she's like, yeah. And I said, oh my God, that's so funny. And then I met you and we chatted, and it was just it's so thrilling for me. So yeah, let's talk about an interesting journey. So let me just in case people, I mean, listen, if you don't know who this is, then you really need to like really open your eyes, because Bernie Siegel is a pioneer, and he started doing things long before anybody else jumped on the wagon to start doing these things. So general and pediatric surgeon. He was a professor and a surgeon at Yale. In 1978, he originated the exceptional cancer patients, a specific form of individual group therapy utilizing patients' drawings, dreams, images, and feelings. This was a lot of new groundwork this man has created. The physical, spiritual, and psychological benefits which followed led to his desire to make everyone aware of his or her healing potential. And he realized exceptional behavior is what we are all capable of. So Bernie and his beautiful wife, Bobby, who passed away in 2018, the two of them pioneered some phenomenal stuff. They were a fabulous team. They had, in the interim of all these things that I'm going to tell you that he did, that they had 5 children. They have 8 grandchildren. Bernie and Bobby co-authored their children, I love that, books and articles. Their home, with its many children, pets, and interests, resembled a cross between a family art gallery, museum, zoo, and automobile repair shop. It still resembles these things, although the children try to improve the appearance in order to avoid embarrassment. Bernie created books with a goal of humanizing medical education and medical care, as well as empowering patients and teaching survival behavior to enhance immune system competency. This is unbelievable, this stuff. His realization that we all need to help dealing with the difficulties of life, not just the physical ones, led to Bernie writing his 4th book in 1998, Prescriptions for Living. 4th book, but he's got like a gazillion books, okay? It helps people to become aware of the eternal truths and wisdom of the sages through Bernie's stories and insight, rather than wait for personal disaster. He wants to help people fix their lives before they are broken. For many, Bernie needs no introduction. He has touched many lives all over the planet. In 1978, began talking about patient empowerment and the choice to live fully and die in peace. As a physician, he has cared for and counseled innumerable people whose mortality has been threatened by an illness. Bernie embraces a philosophy of living and dying that stands at the forefront of the medical ethics and spiritual issues our society grapples with today. He continues to assist in the breaking of new ground in the field of healing and personally struggling to live the message of kindness and love. He was named one of the top 20 spiritually influential living people on the planet by Watkins Review in 2011. Now, he 20, but he made the list in 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014. And in order to get that list, you have to be alive. You have to be a person that has made a unique and spiritual contribution on a global scale. And the person is frequently Googled, appears in Nielsen data, and highlighted throughout the blogosphere. Now, you started, your first book was Love, Medicine, and Miracles in 1986. I tried so hard to find my copy. I could not find it. I wanted so proudly to hold it up, and I couldn't find it. And you wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 books. Peace, love.
Or now.
For now, right.
I mean, we're up to close to 20 now.
Yes. The last one was 3 Men, 6 Lives. Is that your last book?
Yeah.
Yep. Prescriptions for Living, 365 prescriptions for the soul. Help Me to Heal. Love, Magic, and Mud Pies. I love that name. Faith, Hope, and Healing, 101 Exercises for the Soul. Book of Miracles, The Art of Healing, Uncovering Your Inner Wisdom and Potential for Self-Healing. Love, Animals, and Miracles. I see a pattern, Bernie, that is a lot of love constantly. And I think it's very interesting because that doesn't often go with medical, like the medical profession. So here's my question I want to start off with. How did you do this? How did you, in the 70s, you know, to have this insight and decide to start implementing these changes in a society that was so not there. And I'll tell you, I remember what I mean in the book. I loved how you took your white coat off. You wanted your patients to call you Bernie. You didn't want to be called doctor. And they would say things like, how are they going to know who the doctor is? And you said, if I remember correctly, you said something like, well, when I walk in to do the surgery, they're going to know that I'm the doctor, you know? And you made all these like really beautiful changes. So how did you get that insight to do this? And then how about the resistance that you got back then?
Well, on all the magazines where my face was, is the word controversial. Interview with the controversial Dr. Siegel. It's what made me famous, because I was on Oprah, Phil Donahue, all of those things, because I caused trouble. And I used to get a kick out of Oprah because, you know, you get a phone call, would you like to be on Oprah? Oh boy, yeah. And then when you get there are 5 doctors sitting there to tell you you're a nutcase, you know? I mean, she wasn't picking on me, but it was her program, you know, that got everybody excited and all the interaction that went on. But what I saw was, I know the truth from my experience. So I became a storyteller. And then doctors didn't argue with you. They could say, well, that's just a case. That's a story. That's an anecdote. If I try to convince them statistically, then they'd argue with me if they didn't have the same beliefs. That's poorly controlled study. What journal was that in? So I learned, as I said, just tell stories and stop, you know, arguing with people, because they couldn't deny my experience. And what I found was they would then have things happen. And if they passed me in the hall at the hospital, they'd say, hey, I got a story for you, one of my patients. And the same thing with the physicians in the hospital giving care, you know, radiation, chemotherapy, surgery. Nurses would say to me, your patients are a problem. And believe me, I don't make up any of these stories. I'd say, what's the matter? They refuse pain medication. I said, ever occur to you they don't hurt? What are you, crazy? You cut them open and they don't hurt. In radiation therapy, we thought the machine was broken because this patient has no reaction to the radiation. So I thought she's not being radiated. But then I saw your name in the chart, so I knew she's a crazy patient. He said to her, why don't you have a reaction? I get out of the way and I let it go to my tumor. See, now the other side of the coin, which again just showed how powerful the mind was. One of the radiation therapists said to me, oh, I feel awful. I said, what's the matter? How can I help you? A month ago, they repaired the machine. And I just did my monthly routine inspection and realized they never put the radioactive material back in the machine. So I haven't treated anybody for an entire month. I said, are you crazy? He said, what are you talking about? Am I crazy? How come you didn't realize you hadn't treated anybody? I said, everybody acting as if they were being treated. And he almost fainted. Oh my God, you're right. See, and that showed him how powerful the mind was. They think they're being treated. So, I mean, they had benefits of a treatment they weren't even getting, and side effects too, you know? And so my patients began to be called Siegel's crazy patients. But it became an affectionate term. See, not something to get annoyed with, but it became an affectionate term because they were happy to take care of Siegel's crazy patients. I mean, this is a quote from one of them. So you understand, again, the power of the mind. A woman came up from North Carolina because her doctor said, you've got 2 months to live. Don't bother to go all the way to Duke to get treatment. You'll just feel worse. Up here, my quadriplegic father-in-law was being helped by a home health aide. And she said, that's my cousin. So I told her to come up here because you make people well all the time. And I wouldn't have told her to say that, you know, but I also learned that the power, see, of that woman's belief. Siegel makes people well, come on up. She came up, learned she had leukemia. So I explained, I don't take care of patients with leukemia. I'll call my oncologist friend and they'll come and see you. And I brought her to the hospital and sat on the bed, talked with her, said goodbye, and my oncologist friend went by to see her. His first note to me was, I agree with her, doctor. She's got about 2 months to live. But this was in his note. I know you and your crazy patients, so I'll give her hope.
Oh.
Then I started getting a note from him every week because she went in for therapy. Doing well, very well. The 6th note said, in complete remission. Isn't chemotherapy wonderful? That was his sense of humor. Because these were doctors who, oh God, did they criticize me when I started the support groups, telling me, you don't know what the hell you're doing. You're not a psychiatrist. You can make them feel worse. I mean, they literally made me come to their office and yelled at me for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I believe it.
And I just sat and listened with a smile, you know, because I thought, you know, I'm not going to get upset about this. I'm trying to help people. But they learned from the patients. You see, it isn't so much Siegel, it's the patients. They're teaching us, you know, their attitude, their hope. And then you learn there's survival behavior. See, psychiatrists realize it. Because if you've developed a life-threatening illness, whether it's the present COVID, AIDS, cancer, you go to see a psychiatrist to help you face, you know, the future. They write articles about immune competent personalities. Because they noticed there were certain people who didn't die when they were supposed to. So why not tell the others that if they act this way? And one psychiatrist in California said to me, you're a nutcase. You know, all the things you're saying are ridiculous. When I was near enough for him to come hear me lecture, he would sit in the audience going like this for 2 hours.
I've seen that. I've seen that.
Yeah. So what does he do? I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to start a support group. So he starts a support group for women with cancer and a control group of women with cancer who don't come to his group. At the end of the year, who had a better survival rate? The ones that were coming to his support group. And so he changed, started writing books and helping people. Yeah. And what changed me, this was a quote from one of my patients who I met at a lecture, the workshop by Dr. Carl Simonton years ago. I thought he could teach me some more things too. And there were my patients. I was the only doctor in the room. See, that's the craziness. You got 150 people trying to help deal with cancer, and not one oncologist in the entire state of Connecticut was there.
Yeah.
But my patients came over and sat around me because they weren't afraid of me as a person. And this is the quote I will never forget. It altered my whole life. You're a nice guy. I feel better when I'm in the office with you, but I can't take you home with me. So I need to know how to live between office visits. And I went back to the office and one of my partners said to me, you're gone. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you're not the same person you were Friday. How changed I was by that workshop. And he was right. I retired, say maybe 10 years later. He said, you're going to quit surgery, because I started helping people and the support groups. And they taught me about survival behaviors, what I call it. Because when you would meet people you thought were dead, I would say, hey, how come you didn't die when you were supposed to? Why didn't you come back to the office, you know? And they would always tell me a story. And so those are the stories I shared with others. And when I say a story, it doesn't mean they went halfway around the world to get treatment. You know, there were things like I got a dog and put it in a backyard wildlife habitat. I bought a house on the ocean. I canceled the dress code at work.
They lived.
I moved to Colorado to live in the mountains. Oh yeah, one landscaper said, no more treatment. I said, but there's signs of cancer still in your body after I operate on him. He said, it's springtime. You forgot that. I'm going to go home and make the world beautiful. So when I die, I leave a beautiful world. He lived to 91 and became my therapist. You know what I mean? Because when you walked around with John, the world became a gorgeous place. I would walk in the woods with him and do things, and he just made me see a beautiful world.
Yeah.
You know, so those are the things that I try to teach people as well as live for myself. And so again, it's not about not dying. It's about living.
Yes.
Oh, and it's not about statistics, because doctors would say, you're giving false hope. What the hell are you talking? What's false hope? You know, that's an oxymoron. How can you have false hope? If you buy a lottery ticket, you could win. Okay. The odds are not good, but you could.
That's right.
So you can have some hope. And those are the things I saw. I'm trying to get people to understand statistics don't determine what happens to you. And doctors would kill people, though, because they would say, you have 2 months to live. And people, well, I know one man, when the insurance company refused him cataract surgery, they said, you have lung cancer. We expect you'll be dead in 6 months. We're not going to spend money on cataract surgery. But it was screwing up his life. He couldn't see to enjoy his life. So he went home, laid down, and was dead in 5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the part, you know, when there's no reason for living. He can't see. I can't play with my grandchildren. I can't read the paper. What the hell's the point? All the things that happen. And as I say, so the survivors became my teachers. Yeah. And
I think that's the most beautiful part about it, is that when you decide to provide service to others, I'm not talking like as a doctor, you know, it is your, you take an oath and you're going to take care of people. I mean, when an individual, regardless of what their job is, when they decide to provide service to others, they know that there's no expectation of a transactional relationship, but it is reciprocated always, because what you give out comes back to you. And then when you're open to it, you learn just as much. And I've taught for years. I taught for almost 2 decades teaching health sciences. And it's like, I would get just as much back from my students as they gave to me, as they gave my patients. And that was the beauty of it, if you're open to it. But you open yourself to that.
Yeah, I couldn't help deny their stories. And this was, again, some criticism I got. So when people would come in and I'd say, what's going on in your life? What happened last 3 or 4 months? Trying to point out to them why they might have gotten ill now. Doctors would say to me, oh, you blame your patients. I said, what are you talking about? Well, you keep asking them what's happening in their life. It's like it's their fault. I said, I'm not blaming them. I'm trying to get them to understand why. You see, what we need to understand, and this is a fact, your emotions affect your immune system and your stress hormone levels.
Absolutely.
So when a student whose professor didn't believe it made sense said to him, no, I'm not going to let you do that as a thesis. He wanted to draw blood from actors and see what happened to their immune function and other things. The professor said, that's ridiculous. Why should acting change anything? I called his professor to support him. And the professor said, all right, I'll let him do this study. And sure enough, what did it show? He had a male and a female actor, an actress. One is a comedy. The other, the man has murdered her husband. And they meet. Now, he drew their blood while they were doing the scripts he gave them. Comedy, immune function went up, stress hormone levels down. Tragedy, stress hormone levels up, immune function down. So his professor was convinced. But that's why I would say to people, what's going on in your life? You know, I lost my job. Well, let me tell you my example. My wife and I had an incredibly profound love. I mean, we were married since we were kids. I mean, our lives were together. And one morning I walk in the bedroom and I thought she was sleeping. I went to wake her up and she was dead. Nice and peaceful. But 9 months later, because I was feeling the loss of a loved one, my heart, you see, which is so typical. What organ in your body is about love? Your heart. My heart went crazy, what's called auricular fibrillation, which has been corrected. But I thought that is so classical of what I'm teaching. You know, I'm trying to, you know, I have her pictures everywhere, continue to love her, etc. Yeah, she's right over my heart. That's a picture of her. See, every day that goes right in the pocket. So she's with me. But, you know, I said, this is classical. My heart, look who I lost. And, you know, that's again, I'm not blaming myself, but it's what I was feeling.
Right.
You work at recovering. I mean, the mystical, I don't know if you want to get into this, the mystical things that have happened after she died were incredible. So I knew she was with me all the time. And I mean that still. One of the things just that was incredible is with numbers. She was born on 9/9. And, oh, when I went to the hospital, when I say numbers, every number on my patient identification that I was handed, okay, a new number, 8 is a new beginning. The numbers are 996633. Everything adds up to 9. And the case numbers, everything. And when I went to the emergency room, I mean, I knew you'll be fine. Stop worrying. I walk in the emergency room and there's a voice yelling out of the back of the room, put him in room 9. And I just walked in. And the hospital room, they said, there isn't a room for you yet. The next day, we got a room, 819. Adds up to 99, you know? I mean, I know my wife's watching out for me. And the same thing, one of our kids was just diagnosed with a type of cancer. And he sent me a copy of his medical sheet. And the same thing, his patient number, his case number. I said, look, you'll be fine. Mom's watching over you too. All these nines. And the other is 11. We were married on the 11th. And I have found dime and penny in all kinds of bizarre places, from bird baths to supermarkets to in our bed under all the blankets and sheets. I was making the bed and the blankets and sheets flew out of my hand. Instead of my pulling them, they went the other way. I mean, that was so mystical. It has convinced me of the nature of life. Lying there on the sheet is a dime and a penny. And I never would have found it if I just pulled everything, you know, and tucked it in as I do every morning. I mean, that only happened once, but look what's in the bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, my mind is open to the possibilities. And I think the mind, I'm glad I used that word, because the mind is what controls it. Your body believes what your mind conceives.
Absolutely.
So the patients who say, I get out of the way and let it go to my tumor, you know, they're seeing things in a different way than the patient who, oh, well, I do a lot of work with drawings. You mentioned the one book, The Art of Healing. It's literally filled with drawings. And somebody draws the devil giving me poison. They have every side effect in the book. And the other one draws chemotherapy as a gift from God. And, you know, and so you know why one is having every side effect and the other one's having no trouble at all. Yeah. And I would say that, I used to say that to people, you know, draw, I mean, I still do, but draw yourself receiving your treatment, draw yourself at work, draw your home and family. It doesn't matter what you draw. I recommend it to anybody watching this. Get a whole box of crayons because every color has meaning. And draw a picture of something you'd like help with. Then it's like having a dream. Put it aside for 24 hours and then look at it the next day and you'll notice something, you know, like, oh, I don't have any ears, or I left my husband's arms off, or, you know, or the kids are outside and we're inside. And you can look at, these are things I want to improve. We should all be together. We should be listening to each other. You know, the simple things. Yeah. Or you said, you know, I drew myself in the operating room and it's an empty room. I'm the only one there. Right. So make sure you feel that people are caring for you, that you're not isolated.
And, you know, and speaking of the operating room, I remember reading in Love, Medicine, and Miracles when you talked about how when you started bringing up the idea that people under anesthesia are hearing
Absolutely.
hearing the conversations, and you were one of the first people too to also start playing like music in the operating room, and really caught a lot on that one. They were like, they can't hear you. And wasn't there a story that one woman actually said, was it a patient that said, heard the whole conversation that your staff was having, something like that? And
well, two things. One is the people who were helping me began to feel better too, because I was playing music. See, the first thing was you're an explosion hazard, because some of the gases used for anesthesia are explosive. So I'm bringing an electrical appliance in, and it scared the wits out of them. But within 2 weeks, everybody said, it feels so good to listen to the music. We'll take the hazard. And then what was called the boom boxes in those days got into all the operating rooms, and everybody was playing music. But talking to people under anesthesia, Siegel, you're crazy. But then a patient wakes up and said, I didn't hear the end of the joke. And the anesthesiologist said, what are you talking about? And she told him the first few lines of a joke he had told me. And that's what made them believe, Or sometimes I would just talk to patients. I'd say, I'd like your pulse to be 82. And the damn thing would go to 82. And you got a monitor there. And everybody'd be, wow. I mean, I don't know how somebody's mind under anesthesia knew it's 82. But it was amazing how the mind and body interacted. And so whether people are in coma or under anesthesia, they hear you.
Yeah.
It's no different than you waking up if the alarm goes off. You're sleeping, but you're still hearing. And the same thing in that state of coma, that you're still hearing. And so I would talk to people all the time. And one thing that's fascinating, I don't know how I got all these ideas, but when people were going to have surgery, I'd say, tell the blood in your body to leave the area we're going to operate in. And you could see it made a difference. So I have friends and relatives who tell me, I'm having prostate surgery, I'm having, this. I say, tell the blood to leave the area of the surgery. And they're not afraid to say to their surgeons, because if they think I'm crazy, they say, my brother-in-law, my friend, Dr. Siegel, said to move the blood away. After surgery, I've gotten this report from so many surgeons. It was incredible. I've never seen it so dry, you know what I mean? So little blood when I've done this kind of surgery before. So they're changed by the experience with the patient, because they can't deny what happened. So then they'll begin to use the mind and have helped too. And even, let me tell you this last one, patient's heart stopped beating in the operating room. And the anesthesiologist said, I can't get it going, Bernie. I'm sorry. I'm going to call to have a stretcher sent up to take him to the morgue. So what does crazy Siegel do? I yell out loud, Jimmy, it's not your time yet. Come on back. His heart started beating again.
Oh my God.
And I never forget the anesthesiologist looking at me and saying, I like working with you. But, those are the stories that got spread around about crazy Siegel. But people began to enjoy me and learn and help patients. And as I said, the way I put it was, nobody is against success. So if what you do is crazy, but it works, it gets accepted. Yeah. If it didn't work, no, that's different. But when what you're doing is working, everybody sees it and you get accepted.
And what you did was you put the power back into the person, and you empowered them. And a lot of people felt very disempowered when they would go to a doctor. They do. And you did this, we're talking like 50 years ago. You were doing these type of things. And it still to this day is very hard for people to understand just how powerful they are, like that we can create these things ourselves.
what drives me nuts is the lack of medical education. See, Jung said this, like, I don't know, maybe 100 years ago. He said the diagnosis helps the doctor, but it doesn't help the patient. For there, the key thing is the story. For it alone shows human background and human suffering. And only at that point can the doctor's therapy begin to operate. It's like the woman who said to me, I need to know how to live, you know? But doctors are treating a disease, not a person.
Right.
So they don't see the results that they could achieve if they said, let me help you, you know, not we'll treat your disease. So I learned this one too, which is so simple. People would have a problem and I'd say, how would you describe what you're going through? A headache. Well, it's pressure. She had cancer. It's failure. So what's my question? See, if they come up with a negative word, if somebody said it's a new beginning, I'd say, okay, you're on the right track, because they're refocusing on their life and, you know, not eliminating what's killing them. Let's put it that way.
Right.
The woman with pressure, I said, I'll do a meditation with you to relieve the pressure in your life, because I didn't want to get into her life. I didn't know her that well. Or I would have said, if she were a long-time patient of mine, I would have said, what fits that word in your life? Say, what fits that negative word? And we did a meditation and I left her. About 20 minutes later, the nurse came over to me, because this was in the emergency room. And she said, it's her marriage. The headache's gone. She's going home to straighten out her marriage. That impressed me even, see. Then the lady with failure. I said, how does failure fit your life? Well, my body's failed me. I have cancer. That's not my question. Your life. Oh, my parents committed suicide when I was a child. I must have been a failure as a child. And let me say this to anybody out there. Were you loved by your parents? If you said yes, okay. If you said no, you need to read all the things I've written and begin to love yourself. And I become your CD, which is your chosen dad, and let you know you're worth loving. Because a study at Harvard, did your parents love you? No. 94, I think, oh, it was 96% of those students had a major illness by the time they were middle-aged. Did your parents love you? Yes. 24% had suffered a major illness in that same time period. And when you were saying to me, how did I get into this? I had wonderful, loving, therapeutic parents. And most of the people we know today, philosophers, religious leaders, had therapeutic parents too. That's why they're preaching those messages. I always hear Norman, not Norman Cousins, but, oh dear, the minister. Anyway, his name will come back. I have trouble with names. But my mother would say, God is redirecting you. Something good will come of this. And it drove me nuts as a kid. I'm looking for help, sympathy, not her in the kitchen saying, God is redirecting you. Something good will come of this. But, you know, God and I talked a lot because my mother didn't help me. But this minister, is it Norman Vincent Peale? Maybe it was Norman Vincent Peale. He said his mother would say, Norman, if God slams one door, further down the corridor, another will be open. So again, you see, you're growing up with that. See, God is redirecting you. Do what makes you happy. And we're here to help other people, you know, not accumulate your stuff, but to help others. And I didn't realize how special that was, because when you grow up with love, you think everybody does. You can't believe, you know, when you go to school and the kid's all bruised and you say, what happened? And he says, I fell off my bike. He's not going to tell you his father just beat the hell out of him, his alcoholic father. I mean, I've had kids in schools, because I love going there with our pets. I sneak in the back so the principal, you know, is not going to be scolded by parents saying, you shouldn't have let the dog in, not if my son's allergic. you know, I'd go in the back, go into the class, read, and the dogs would wander around. The kids felt loved. And this kid would come up to me while I'm sitting and reading and poke me. What is it? Will you be my father? It used to break my heart. But when I said CD, VD, I got to show you this. A young woman called me decades ago to give her Jack Kevorkian's phone number if I had it, because she wanted to be dead.
Oh.
She was abused by her father, brain tumor, everything went wrong. This is a recent card to me. Can you read it?
Yep. Happy Father's Day to my bonus dad.
Yeah. So I said to her, I'll be your CD. Because that was what one of my patients told me. You're my CD. I said, what the hell are you talking about? I'm a CD. She said, you're my chosen dad. And because of her, I've saved a lot of lives by saying that. Because people call up, they want to be dead, alive. I say, look, we'll start a new life. I'll be your father. I'm your CD. And when her message was on my answering machine about wanting to be dead, you have Kevorkian's phone number, I called her and said, I love you. You're a child of God. I'll be your father. And here she is alive today. And this just came this year for Father's Day, which is, I mean, we've known each other, she said, for 30 years. But I just thought it was so cute that she picked out that bonus day, you know, bonus dad card and sent it to me. So I keep them here to restore me. See, she's like my therapist now.
Yeah.
She's sending me love all the time and these wonderful cards and poems. I even put one of her poems on my website recently because she is now feeling that love. And so the people who came to me for help became my therapists. And this is a quote also from a woman, alcoholic parents who committed suicide, told their children to commit suicide. She's the only one in her family who is alive. When I said, you have a picture of yourself as a baby, I can show you, you're a beautiful kid. No, my parents are real estate agents. They took pictures of houses, not our family. And I used to sit and listen to her, and I learned from Helen Keller, that's the most important thing you can do. See, like you're sitting and listening to me. Helen Keller said, deafness is darker by far than blindness. That really woke me up. If you're going to keep communicating with people, you need to listen. And what I learned was, because I'm a surgeon, what the hell do I do when somebody tells me a story like everybody committed suicide? I would sit there like that, you know? And I realized later, you did the best thing in the world. They talked for hours, heard themselves, and began to make changes. I mean, one lady even, I had to burst out laughing. 2 hours, I didn't say one single word. And you know what she said when we were done? I said, you know, we've got to stop now. She said, thank you. That's the greatest conversation I've ever had with anyone. But I knew she was talking to herself. And this lady, Susan, who's, you know, the suicide family, she said in a letter to me one day, when I let love into my prison, it changed every negative item in it, meaning the experiences in my life, and changed them into something meaningful. Mm. She became my therapist. She became so spiritual and loving. Oh, it was a pleasure to have her around and join, you know, our support groups and things like that. But she, again, she had to let love into her prison. And sometimes it was because I would say, what the hell is the matter with you? You know, what are you screaming and yelling all the time for? You know, to get her to understand she had a chance, an opportunity to change, not just to keep saying, I got the worst parents and the worst this and the worst that. So I confronted her one day and she said, that's when I began to get better.
Do you think that, I mean, I see that really a lot in people, is I think in our society, we're so afraid to love. Like we're afraid of that word. And then we misconstrued the word too. We think of love as, you know, relationships and sexual, and we try to substitute all these things instead of really getting down to the heart of it, literally and figuratively.
Right.
Do you think that?
Well, let me say, I think because of my experience with my wife, I realized we became like one person. We never had to go anywhere or do anything to be happy. You know what I mean? We could be sitting at the kitchen table and we were happy because we had each other. You know, and as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross also said, love is giving with no expectations. So I knew we loved each other and we could have a sense of humor with each other. I mean, I still have my wife's notes to me. You walk in the bathroom one morning and it says, you must be putting something in the food we're eating to make me want to live with you. See, that was, my wife did stand-up one-liners, comedy routine, you know, and the other, if I got angry, you're so handsome when you're angry. I tell that to all the wives.
Good.
Next time your husband's yelling, say, you're so handsome when you're angry. And I can't remember what the hell I was angry about. I mean, she knew how to do it, you know, right. And she was just an incredible person. So I kept learning from her. And also I learned the value of humor because she would get up on stage. I mean, I don't know if you want to hear her 10 warning signs about relationships, but let's say the first one is your husband calls, says he'd like to have dinner out tonight. So you leave a sandwich on the front porch, you know, and so she would go through things like that. And one night, instead of taking her chair in the audience and her going up to do it, it was too awkward to climb down. So I just let her come up and I'm watch the audience. That's again, like we mentioned about your chemistry. They would laugh for 10 or 15 minutes. And it was like, there was a different group of people. Everybody's sitting up straighter, looking younger, happier. And boy, that impressed the hell out of me. So from that night on, I always said to them, pay attention to how you feel now and how you feel 20 minutes from now, you know, and you'll notice the difference. And literally, she would get more thank yous at the end of the evening than I did, you know, because people felt better listening to her. And also, again, I keep thinking of her sense of humor. You know, women would say, oh, what's it like to be married to that wonderful man? And she would say, it's a struggle. And they'd all look at her and then turn to me like, what are you doing to her? But I would nod my head. I agree, you know, because what she was saying is it's work. You know, we work on our relationship. We talk to each other if we're not happy or something happens. But we loved each other. So you got over all the problems through that love. And that's when I learned really the power of it. And as I say, love is giving with no expectations. So when you're doing for another, what a difference it makes.
And that's such a beautiful way to, we're out of time, unfortunately. I could talk to you for hours, and I'm going to give all the information, your website and all that information on the, I'm going to list it in the description in the comment section. And again, I hope all of you watching, see, I fell in love with Bernie a long time ago, and as did so many other people. And I'm convinced that you feel the same way after this interview. And I, again, am so thrilled. Thank you so much for doing this.
I've had 3 books out recently. And this is, again, not just...
Oh, I didn't have that on my list.
But the no endings, only beginnings.
Yeah.
I mean, I love this little book because the short chapters, you know, I keep saying we need to write Bible too, you know, to give us the direction and that sense. And also to tell people to write poetry, keep a journal. This is from 1996. I found it in the house. And this is a birthday of mine, which comes in October from, so almost 25 years ago. The first note was, crosses come in many shapes and sizes. Forgiveness heals. These were things I would write every day to myself. And I began to write poems too. And then I got involved discussing the book I just held up, The No Endings, with one of our grandchildren, Charlie. And we started sharing our poetry. And this was when you realize how perfect everything is. It's just filled with poetry. And I couldn't believe at age 30, he was like, it took me 60 years to get to, he's already there at 30. And one you mentioned, the 3 Men, 6 Lives. I had a past life experience when my friend over the telephone said, why are you living this life? Because it's like this interview. I said, you know, I can't keep talking to you. I have an interview. And she was concerned with how busy I was. So she said, why are you living this life? And I went into a trance. And to make a long story short, I saw myself with a sword in my hand killing people. And I said to her, oh my God, maybe that's why I'm a surgeon, to help people. But I know those things are real, okay? And my present wife was in my past life too. And then I began to realize why her face meant something to me when I first met her. It was like hypnotic. If she looked at me, you know, I could do nothing but love her, no matter how she behaved or what she did. And well, can you go on for 2 more minutes? Because
2 more minutes, that's it.
All right, once she came home from shopping and had to run to the bathroom. So the nice husband goes out to the car and brings everything in, then puts it away. So she comes back to the kitchen. I said, I put everything away. I'm expecting her to say, what a honey, what a sweetheart. Let me give you a kiss. What did she say to me? You don't put tomatoes in the refrigerator. I thought, oh, that's all I get after I spend all my time. So I wrote a poem called Divorce about all my bad habits, including putting tomatoes in the refrigerator. I came back to the kitchen. I read it to her and she laughed. And so I added to the poem, I love her when she laughs. So I took the tomatoes out of the refrigerator and fired the lawyer.
Oh,
but I mean, you know, that's the way we would interact and get along. And it was just wonderful. That's and I say to people, write the poetry, bring forth what's within you. And it doesn't have to rhyme. It's just words on a page, if you know what I mean. And so if something was affecting me, whether it was at the hospital or usually I bring it home and write. And then again, I promise is the last thing. My wife said one day when she found my hidden journal, there's nothing funny in it. I said, my life isn't funny. You know, as a surgeon, all the things I see. And then she told me funny stories I told her and the kids at dinner time that happened in the hospital. Lots of funny, crazy things. And I never put them in the journal. And so that's when I began to realize, don't forget the good things. And keep them there. And I'd say that to everybody. Keep a journal, not just of your troubles. You know, like I said, crosses come in many shapes and sizes, and so does life. So enjoy it all. And one last smile. We have 5 kids. The kitchen was a disaster. They were all screaming and fighting and yelling around the table. And I walked in and I said, you may choose peace or you may choose conflict. And our daughter has hearing impairment. And she said, I'll have pizza. And they all busted out laughing and the argument was over. So that's why my wife was so good. She could get everybody to smile and the fights were over.
That's fantastic. Well,
I promise to be still.
Thank you, Bernie, thank you so much for coming on tonight. And thank you everybody for joining us in this really special conversation tonight. And we will see you all next week. Thank you so much. And get in touch with Bernie, please. It's fabulous. Get his books. He's wonderful. And remember, everybody, just you are the power. So just remember, be you, be real, and be extraordinary. See you next week.